And now that I've dramatically strummed this piano, I shall fade into the night. We open this series in the internet in the distant future of the year 20XX. Well, no, in Rockman.Exe, 2 of the games with the 3rd and 4th on the way had been released. Actually, since I'm reading these reviews in 2020, the number 20 is represented by 2 X's in Roman numerals. Technically, this is the year 20XX! Well, in the not-too-distant future, next Sunday, AD, we're seeing the early days of Gutsman.exe's infamous losing streak as he battles, of all things, the anime's equivalent to the mass production standard normal net navigator AI, which even here can dance circles around the larger brute. Oh right, we're doing that again. Welcome to the .exe anime counting game. We are keeping track of what battleships are used, to the best of our ability, how many times they are used, and how many chips in the total chip library of like 1,000 different chips actually shows up in the anime. Also program advances, and yes, we will be counting anime exclusive chips as well. We apologize in advance if we miss anything. While I ragged on the animation a bit when I talked about the lackluster opening theme to Season 1, well, this is partly to why. Early on, Xebec actually did put a fair amount of quality effort in animating the NetNavi's limbs, manifesting the effects of the battleship programs. Later on in the series, hell, even in this season, they'd moved to just using the detail fake out of a limb being obscured by light, and then morphing into the needed shape for the weapon. It's a cheap tactic, but it makes weak budget stronger and allows it to get saved for the money shots. But to everyone's surprise, Gutsman actually wins? What universe is this? I suck at playing the Nintendo Hard Classic Mega Man games, and even Gutsman doesn't give me issues in those. Well, it's because this breed of normal Navi is all agility and no power. With the sword chip just manifesting as a dull metal blade, it's not going to get past the punching gauntlets of the guts, leading to the normal Navi's loss and, of all people, Neto Hikari losing to Takao in the local arcade, where in this incarnation stations are set up for players to net battle instead of out in the world at random. Jeez, can you think of people in the games had to not only agree to battle, but then find a suitable server to run their homebrew game on? No wonder Pokemon trainers snap you to battle whenever you make eye contact. As I mentioned in the review of Battle Network 3, this is where you're most able to hear the intended characterization of Takao as more of a schoolyard gangster Yankee, the portrayal by his actor Yusuke Namuta, also known for such roles as Tak in Time Ranger and actually no other notable roles, which is kind of sad. Hits all the notes you'd usually hear of a character meant to be a rough-and-tumble gang or Yakuza member. The basic equivalent of someone doing a bad Al Capone impression, or something the likes of Fat Tony from The Simpsons. It's just the manner of talk adopted for that. Still, the loss frustrates Neto, as he can literally fight circles around Takao as an operator. Normal Navis just can't cut it for net battling at his level. Something he uses on Nemeo as they walk home after classes, where he ends up appreciating Roll. Not like that! Only for his best friend to be chased away by both a piano recital and Takao's affections, as he likes her in this incarnation. As does Gutsman the same with Roll, with both girls sending up every do not want flag they can in regards to the matter. Something else notable for its oddity and anachronism in the modern day, all of Neto's group in this series make use of sports equipment for transport. I assume it's meant to be a basic way to visually address Neto's ever-present pair of skates for the game's faster run mode, but considering anyone who's gotten those kind of razors and close-to-the-ground wheel machines always end up toppling over if you ever run across any sidewalk cracks, this is speaking from experience by the way, and this is Japan where street use of that stuff isn't exactly ideal, yeah, they're kinda dumb. You could've just had it be a quirk of his to have them with him, since all of the others' modes of transport end up dropped later bar those skates when they actually end up at Chekhov's gun in some episodes. Though to be fair, any of you who watched this series when you were young, come on, we all know you wanted a pair of those shoes where you could clip in the skate bottoms to them. Screw those stupid fad wheelie shoes. This is what we were talking about and wanted. The show at this point then properly introduces the concept of net battles and our series' main battle AI incarnations of the franchise's main robot baddies, with Netto having to explain all of this to the calcium-obsessed Mesa the Fishmonger. The only character it seems in this era doesn't have a personal terminal and NetNavi to connect him to everyone and thing remotely. Oh, little does he know. And likewise, the exposition is a bit meh. Yeah, if you played the games, you'd know this all already, but it's details that could have been delivered in a setting establishing narrator overdub, allowing some kid ignorant to the series to see more battle time with the prior fight to catch kids who more have an action fixation in their tastes. Not like it would have cut down on time with establishing Mesa's older-timey ways, but more informed him as an anachronism against the modern day. As in his public persona, he just doesn't get these kids today with their gizmos and their gadgets and their life simulators running their lives, and oh my god, we literally living in the future minus the AIs already. Huh. Both see fire trucks nearby heading out to deal with another sudden outbreak of fires in people's homes, the 10th that week, all caused by ongoing virus infections in people's appliances. As he gets home, however, he's told by his mom that he's gotten a letter from his dad as he's traveling for work again, with Yuichiro Hikari in this incarnation having taken a sabbatical from work at Scilab to do some exploratory traveling across the world to explain and excuse his regular appearances in this incarnation for the first act of the series. This of course changes later down the line, but this absence actually ends up setting up a story arc way later as well, which of course is what a good writer does. Leaves seemingly innocuous stuff they can follow up on later for better payoff, instead of saying, oh, I meant to do that from the start, even though it's obvious I really didn't, because neither of these 2 points connect in any way, shape, or form to make sense. I really have seen too many series that have done that as of late. But in the letter is a program installation disk, giving Netto his own custom NetNavi, at least once it finishes installing, to his frustration and impatience.
ネットばっかりいいな。雄一郎さん、早く帰ってきてね。
Subtle. This script is. Also, yeah, Netto's mom sounds way too young in the Japanese audio versus the dubbed character's actress. Say what you will of American voice actors for kid protagonists often not sounding young unless the actor voicing them is a woman, but they usually make an attempt to make them sound younger, so it's like their voices just dropped early. Hell, I like Brad Swale voicing Lan for just that reason. Here, though, it sounds like Netto's mom is his older sister, and that's just wrong. What makes it worse is Masako Joe's done better work than this, specifically her voicing role in this series. But sure enough, the program installs and the next morning, Netto has his own custom NetNavi, Rockman. That is just a palette swap of what his prior mass production Navi looked like. Man, can you imagine if Rockman was actually the mass production model? I mean, what would that even look like?
イメージと違うんだよ、俺の。もっとこう、体がでかくて強そうなやつを期待してたんだ。なんかがっかりだな。
To be fair, an 11-year-old probably hasn't grasped the concept of, it's not the size that counts, it's how you use it. But nonetheless, Netto's got to make use of his new tool, to deal with the oven fire starting in his own house on top of all the other fires, as these electrical fires caused by electrical viruses aren't the type you can deal with a fire extinguisher. Is that the plasma fire sound effect from Halo? Well, okay, I guess Surge Soul kind of does make Rockman into Master Chief, but that's not for a season and a half yet. But before he can do anything actiony aside from pew pew pew, the instigator of this attack logs out, leaving them completely clueless. Though Netto's at least more appreciative of what Yuichiro sent.
体は小さいけど強いんだな、お前。気に入ったぜ、ロックマン。よろしくな。
But without getting the source, it's only a matter of time before they're going to go after someone again, as Rockman later informs his operator as they have to get to school. With this segueing into the direction of the anime's version of Mr. Match, named in Japanese Kenichi Hino, nicknamed Hinoken, which is what I'll stick with, and Dr. Wily. Expecting net agents? The subs I have say net battlers, but Obvious line flub there on the translator's part. I did say that it happens a lot with older subs like this. To have been behind stopping their acts of anarchistic arson, not some young kid and a factory fresh NetNavi.
今度もしそいつが現れたら
Boss, there seems to be some lag on your end if you're trying to do a dramatic pause.
構わんデリートだ
So Neto and Hikawa have their rematch with Rockman now in play.
メガガッツパンチスロットイン
With Rock's dense power able to overcome the Bruiser actually using techniques this time. While over with Mail, her oven is the next hit at home, the fire causing her to send Rollout to get the others to help. Also, call the police and the fire department! With this then, of course, highlighting something we didn't get a lot of in the games because, well, they're RPGs that force you to grind and walk everywhere. Rockman getting fast travel linked to the affected system to help in clearing it out, while the others travel there in the interim to get Meilu out of the building before it's too late. It is here we get the first of many battles between Fireman and Rockman, while Neto's busy outside, but it also once more shows a limitation of the current PET technology. Because Neto went there physically to save Meilu's life, the prior remote terminal connection Neto would have had isn't available. Thus Neto has to do the reckless, stupid thing and brave an even hotter blaze to connect to Meilu's oven and operate Rockman. And like I said, the animation on Sword's a bit different now. It actually seemed to have energy and life to it. Though with Fireman's arm being destroyed like the normal Navi's was earlier, Hinoken doesn't want to risk his Navi on this, and forcibly logs him out, as another sign of a story difference. Yeah, if you battle a Navi in the games, most times outside of mock fights, the opposing Navi just ends up deleted when defeated, only for operators to restore their Navis from backup data copies. The base, deleted version, of course, won't bring the games as ghost data until we delete those too. Here, there isn't really a way to back up Navi data, normally, so operators who place value in their Navis are far less reckless in the possibility of losing their partners permanently. Hell, even when copy Navis become a thing later down the line, they end up lacking the, for lack of a better term, soul of the originals for the most part. So of course, the only way to have recurring antagonists early on is for them to regularly retreat from combat instead of lasting through the entire fight. For some reason, it never means they continue just doing what they were doing before, as it's not like their plan was foiled outright. Still, Meilu's safe, and Roll's got someone new to glomp, with Neto praising once more his new Navi's capabilities, and asking if he can get help cheating at his homework. The Rockman anime didn't exactly start on a high with this, but it did what it needed to do to set the story. Even if they're not brothers, the same dynamic of Len and Mega Man you see in the games is quickly set up, with Neto being a normal, lazy but talented at this one thing kid that's got a small group of friends and a capability as a troubleshooter moving up to unintentionally get involved into dealing with net crimes, and it does it well. The music does a decent job of accenting this, but I swear Studio Zebek might have mined the prior Mega Man animated series for BGMs, as I swear some of the background music is from one of them. I can't place the exact one, but it's nagging at me. Hikawa as well gets a bit better establishing of characterization of his ways than you'd get from reading the dialogue of the games, since he usually comes off as the weakest character in any Battle Network game he's featured in, even if it's later played for comedy over time. Whereas right now, Meilu has the opposite, though more comes later. But something of note about the plot of the debut episode is it has a lot, and I mean a lot of similarities to the first episode of the Metabots anime series written by Ryota Yamaguchi that began releasing in 1999, 3 years before the Rockman anime was first aired. It's uncanny how samey they come across as. They're both anime adaptations of Game Boy games about two kids about the same age who are talented in the popular type of kids gaming sport lacking the device to actually succeed at it, Neto a custom Navi, and Metabots protagonist Iki Tenryu lacking himself a Metabot or their AI control medal, by a fortuitous chance suddenly gaining the means to acquire one, are disappointed initially with what they do get, but instantly show their capability in combat together before settling into a slow-to-build rivalrous siblings relationship. Now, I'm not saying Kenichi Araki ripped off Ryota Yamaguchi, despite both of them knowing each other from their prior works where they had at times collaborated on things when they both worked on Zoids, or when they both worked at Toei on Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. or for Sunrise with the Brave series, Gundam and Escaflowne. Wow, those two really did collaborate a lot. Back to the point, I don't feel Araki intentionally ripped off Metabots for this. For all I know, both series were making reference to an older work or a general set-up-the-world template for younger audience adventure shows based off of other works. But it contributes, even early on, to why the first season of the anime, even from the first episode, isn't considered all that great. It's just derivative to other series in the same market, and struggles to otherwise stand out or distinguish itself. A stigma the series would not shake for some time.
せっかく電産タウンまで来たんだ。カラオケでも行こっか。調子に乗らない。
Soon! Following from his one punch of failure defeat by Fireman in the last ep, Dekao works to restore Gutsman's data and go for a rematch, only for him to be attacked by a small robotic cat toy in his home. Boy, that'll get awkward when this universe eventually gets to the copybot technology down the line.
まさか猫のおもちゃに。
猫のおもちゃじゃなくて、猫型のネズミ捕獲器だよ。
Because even pets lose their jobs to robot labor outsourcing in the future. Well, after teasing Dekao about his crush on Meilu that lands him in pain at the hands of said girl, the pair end up discussing, and thus introducing, the series' early antagonists, World 3, who Neto doesn't know of because he doesn't keep up with the news. Sure you didn't want to use Mesa as an exposition excuse again? Nah, Saloma's got that covered. They're at her flower shop for excellent tea, apparently, with her warning them to avoid the infamous net terrorists lest they want to get into trouble themselves. And they know her... how? Does Meilu come in for the tea regularly despite this being a flower shop? Does she make the tea herself from the plants she grows and sells? Like, introduce your characters and setting, damn it! Some of these people are complete blank slates! But next up to bat among Wily's minions is Hakushaku Elec. Okay, no. Just... no. Like I said, the subs for this series are ancient, so there were differences in audience preferences for what gets translated in regards to a name or not back then, and even this is a bit much for me. While I normally defend not translating certain words in a sub, my standard is, if it's something that doesn't have an equivalent translation, you leave it alone if it doesn't screw with context, which these usually don't, as changing it unnecessarily can make things lose context as well. And normally that applies to names. I don't feel you should need to at any point need to localize a name. Say, turning Masaru into Marcus for Digimon Data Squad. This isn't exactly the case here, as Hakushaku is a Japanese word that has a direct meaning in translation of Earl. It has a translation, and the localization of Elec's name, Count Elec or Count Zap, is not that far off from this, because a Count is the general European equivalent to the noble title of Earl, which is British specific, meaning it's not a localization, it is a near direct translation in this case. Or in other words, the ones I say they should do. Anyways, Count Elec's ready to electrocute people, but instead of his introduction happening at the Electown Power Facility, his overloading of electrical systems take the form of zapping people and electronics all along a shopping district, blowing up clocks and overloading all manner of electrical appliances. Neto and Meilu, after they end up wandering around town after visiting Dekao, end up coming across the mayhem, specifically when Elecman sends rampant another robot animal that steals Miss Mariko's purse. Because of course there's this cliché. With the kids only keeping up with it due to their sports gear, chasing it onto the city's maglev subway system, which then rapidly accelerates out of control. And with the Navi messing with the system, the control center can't do anything to stop it. Even their emergency shutdowns are rendered worthless, risking all the trains colliding. Wow, episode 2 and they're already at mass transit murder. It took them until it was late in the first game for them to pull that, and even then Maddie was more holding them hostage for ransom. So as he is there amidst the danger, Neto's the only one with the quick thinking to avoid a worst-case scenario. And I'm pretty sure the Transit Authority will waive any destruction of public property charges considering he just saved them from a massive lawsuit from both the passengers and the train conductor that got electrocuted. Though it's here we see that there actually is some form of oversight in the system. Common mass production navis fighting to maintain what transit control in the system the officials have. They're just a bit too outmatched by the number of viruses Elecman spread. A good thing to show and help better contrast things from the games, where you're sometimes made to wonder where in a big incident any other help is if everyone's supposed to have a NetNavi these days. Unfortunately, by the time Rockman gets in, too many of them are disabled to be able to stop the train. So when in doubt, evacuate everyone to the rearmost car and cut the connection between the cabins so they can slow to a stop on their own. But Elect gets wind of their plan and confronts Rockman himself, leading to Neto stupidly jumping into the still out of control car of the train to back him up. With Rockman thrown out of the system, Neto can now use the brakes to stop the train and save himself before he runs out of rail line, and to then be out of nowhere hosed down by the hydrant hoses of the first responders. And thus also bringing in a rather annoying subplot for the early stretch of the season, Miyuki the fortune teller. Neto and Meru encountered her earlier, she gives off a cryptic fortune, and then by random circumstance, it comes true. It is complete 100% narrative magic. Now, if it were a better constructed predict the future premise, such incidents would not be as off the walls as they are, as a bunch of people with fire hoses coming out of nowhere to spray down a train car, where doing so would wreck even more of the internal systems and quite possibly injure someone by such knocking them into something, while also covering up evidence of tampering. Instead, you would think of it as something Neto would then have in the back of his mind as a way out of a situation, which is how good I can see the future story points are normally used. The prediction gives knowledge which can be used to lay out a better path for those wise enough to take advantage of the information. Rockman.Exe instead tends to use it for comedy, and comedy that doesn't always make sense, since if Neto's PAT was hit by that spray, well, it's canon that such devices are not waterproof. To not even touch on how them spraying down the consoles of the train car would cover up the evidence of hacking. The wrap-up. We have 3 named battleship uses, with 1 new chip to put on the list. A second recurring Navi antagonist introduction, likely in his V1 incarnation. A Punish Hikawa plot. The series is rife with those. And 1 Meru full-body hugging Neto after an incident. Like the first episode, this one feels a bit dated, but that's to be expected from a children-oriented series made in the 2000s. A lot of these ideas would be infrequently seen in them, or originate from the Battle Network series themselves. Aside from starting an incident, we don't see much from Zap. Hikawa is oddly made to be part of things when him being hospitalized due to the damage his leg should have kept him out of it, and while he's just there to growl about Rockman showing up to foil his agent's plans. And really, outside of causing some economic chaos due to the merchandise Electman's rampancy breaks, not a lot is accomplished here until they randomly wander into the train plot. I get the idea Electman's used this toy dog to get onto the train, but not why it took Mariko's purse. Did they do that intentionally under the impression Neto would follow after it, and then lure him to the train in order to specifically kill him? That's legitimately sinister and subtle and improves the plotting of this a lot, but it's not exactly an overt detail, considering the nonsense that is more present in the foreground that makes things feel more silly, especially since, well, they have no real reason to go after Neto yet with which to cause his death. Also, a bit I didn't get into because there wasn't a good place to put it in, we see more of Mayusa being a comic relief character here with his neurotic obsession over calcium and kids getting proper nutrition, and I just adore Lan and Meilu's interaction with him, as their eyes just both go deadpan in exasperation with the oddly passionate fishman. It's easy to see even early in this series canon why the two get along so well. They generally have the same moods on things and end up deadpan snarking at the insanity around them. And legitimately, while Xebec cheaps out on a lot of animation and fights, they're really good at keeping the casts the right types of expressive for both the art style they are in and the moods of scenes. Usually, series in the late 90s and early 2000s relied heavily on external fourth-wall visual cues to denote moods that have moved out of favor in modern anime, most of the time. And while the series still has them on occasion, it really is more down to facial and eye-based expressions as exaggerated as they still are at times. Though as much of the first season is, this episode is just kind of meh. Again, not doing much to really establish the setting beyond it being a facsimile of the then modern day. Just with sentient AI helping them out. Throughout the first 2 episodes, you've likely noticed a suspicious missing member of Nento's usual circle of friends, and the 3rd episode of the series goes about rectifying that. I don't really see why though. Yai's relevancy to the plot of the games by this point was basically nothing, considering you couldn't even net battle against Glide. Hell, there's only one game in the Battle Network franchise where you can. You know which one it is? Battleship Challenge. And guess what? He sucks there too! But yes, this is our introduction to Yaito Ayano Koji, the super rich heiress to a super conglomerate business, most known to the kids as a video game developer. The writers knew what they were doing. And in this case, Yai is just transferring into class, skipping 2 grades to do so because she's just that much of a genius. I actually have no idea if this is canon of the games, as if there was dialogue about it, I have no recollection of it. Though it would explain her short stature more if she's 9 while everyone else is 11-ish. Sadly though, there are only so many ways to do new student transfers into school plot, and a lot of them go the same way. Either everyone fascinated by the unique nuances of the new kid, which thus annoys the regular characters with how overly extra they are in contrast to everyone else to make them outwardly appear as the special, or said persons overlooked outside of a few people who become or are members of the main cast that find something curious or intriguing about them. Hell, despite Personas 3, 4, and 5 having you from the viewpoint character of the transfer student, those 2 options play out much the same with how Makoto Yuki, Yu Narakami, and Akira Kurusu dealt with transferring in. Hell, Naoto Shiragane's addition to the cast midway in Persona 4 felt like a mild version of Type 1 in such a scenario. Personally, my preference for the transfer student plotline start is the main cast meeting the person transferring in before they actually transfer, so we get to know them a bit that defines them as someone of interest to us without completely overdoing it once you move into the school setting, as doing that sidesteps the issue entirely as their introduction has nothing to do with school, so you can just skip past it. As otherwise, well, the character can unintentionally come off as a complete Mary Sue with how just more special and extra they are in comparison to the more mundane everyone else we actually care about. Sometimes that is done to completely subvert the trope, but it's sadly a rarity. At best, you get the Persona protagonist with this kind of plot. At worst, you have Kyosuke Kiriya from Kamen Rider Hibiki, also known as the character who single-handedly ruined that series for everyone with the Bastard's introduction and turned it from being on the short list of Best Heisei Kamen Rider into competing for the worst writer series of all time. I think right now it's sitting at 4th worst behind Amazon's Ryuki and Zio to my knowledge, since only half of the show is unwatchably terrible instead of being bad throughout its entire run, even though its back half completely and utterly ruins the front half. Don't watch Hibiki past episode 30. And with Yaito being a rich girl skipping grades to be among the cast, yeah, it comes off as the annoying Mary Sue interpretation of such. If you walk into class with a DVD of how much better you are than everyone else that was professionally produced by your parents' company, you're going to annoy people, even if it is clear that they're trying to play it all as one big joke. Though much like last episode, the insufferability of this type of plot only really comes with age and their frequency of use and exposure. Case in point, when Takao and Neto decided they wanted to get to know her better outside of a stuck-up rich girl persona shown at school,
ヤイト様のクラスメートですので、一応ご報告を。
不法侵入はいけないわね。
やばいぞ
Is that a Lawnmower Man reference? Seriously, this is not the way to introduce a character if you want people to like them. What is more interesting instead is Wiley's next subordinate, the always appealing Midoi Iroaya, her surname meaning vivid color, though the kanji for Iro, color, being wordplay, as the character can also mean words connected to traits of one's appearance. Lovely, beautiful, and sensual all ones that popped up from my Kana search. Which fits perfectly a character that is introduced as being rather vain, and an appropriate counterpoint to Yaito's nonsense beginning with this episode. I get amusement out of this, especially being at the forefront of her character though, simply because of the voice actor illusions. In Japanese, her voice actress, Junko Noda, is more known for playing more physically inclined characters like Tatsuki Arasawa in Bleach, Vmon in Digimon, and Toshigi in One Piece. Whereas the anime dub would take Maddie in a slightly different direction, as Maddie's dub voice actress played her as a bit more crazed and by default boisterous due to some of the localization differences. Said actress being Tabitha St. Germain, who's done an assortment of stuck-up characters in this related archetype, from Flay Alistair in Gundam Seed to Rarity in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. The Japanese voice actress was playing against her standard character type, while the English one would have played into her niche if it weren't for the localization. Also, you will never be able to get that out of your heads now. You are welcome. Unlike the prior agents, though, who just chose to sow chaos by attacking at random, Midori has more of a plan than that. The episode adapting the game's events with her having Colorman jam up all the traffic systems in the network. Just, without the traffic barriers as the game had things. Changing a color of a light to screw people over, though, is just so Midori, and really, it's a great subtle plot. Traffic lights fail and go down all the frickin' time, which cause accidents. Hell, a light changing too abruptly can do that any time of day. To someone unaware, it would just appear as a normal system failure, not worthy of any special investigation. And the only way to manually account for a system like that being down would be to occupy the time of every police officer in a district in directing traffic. One distraction leads to another, leaving her free to pull off whatever she wants in the interim. Sadly, the episode doesn't follow through on this, and this is the extent of her plot. Which people are only tipped off to because Yaito is too stuck up and snobbish to use a public restroom, thus leading Glide to finding the virus jamming the system. Why didn't agents in charge of the public transportation system do that? They have navies. And being backed up by Rockman when he points out to Neto that everything gridlocked like this is odd. And with his Rockbuster, he's all set to just break Colorman's giant ball. Is she just not completely adorable? Yeah, I will never understand my fascination with tsunderes. Hell, right now I'm introducing my roommates to one of the best tsunderes out there. The wrap-up. We've only got one battleship use out of this one, for Colorman's not exactly a Navi with a lot of hit points in the first place. We have two introductions of recurring characters here with both Yaito and Midori, and we have one literal toilet humor plot that I just skipped past as I didn't want to spend any more attention on Yai, and it interrupted getting an actual fight with Colorman instead of one side of a curb stomp, and then the retaliatory curb stomp in turn. Again, the net battles in the early side of things suck. While Yaito's a regular through the first season, she's seen less of in Neto's friend pool than Takao, and aside from using her money for various gag items as time goes on, especially in the later sequel seasons where she has, no joke, a private spaceship and a giant robot. Seriously, what even was with this show sometimes? She, as herself, has not much in the way of individual meritable character that adds to the story, partly a consequence of Yai in the games just not having much to her character to really distinguish herself, since a lot of time she is just there as a gal pal for Mei to play off of, and partly the result of her introduction and the story not choosing to do much with her. Again, when the writing staff were given their own leave to construct the plot how they wanted to instead of basing the core details off of the game's content and cast, it really is where the series improves massively. Midori resultantly steals the show with the contrast between them and the focus shift to her, as if to show what actual elegance is since she doesn't need money or being framed as the special to be appealing. She just naturally is. And damn it, I will accept no substitutes. At least until Access. Well, get these kids some transformation trinkets and they're all set to be henshin heroes. Wait, right, that's next season. We start off this time with the introduction of Numberman, beating an opponent with the off-screen use of an invisible battle chip, before making out like a bandit in his dice roll to blow up the random Navi opponent. All to get his operator, the expected Higura Yamitaro, a rare battleship out of the match. Dude, that's an M cannon! They're ridiculously common if you find the right type of cannon virus. Also, once again, excellent visual storytelling for the series. While battleships are inevitably bought in stores around the planet, Like in the games, the chip data can also be found online and manually saved onto the franchise's SD card equivalent hardware. Though you've got me on how the chip image shows up instantly on the things. I would figure you'd have a dedicated sticker printer available to decal the blank chips yourself. What, that used to be a thing for old floppy disks before CD drives were a thing. And you can't tell me I'm the only one who remembers the Nintendo Game Boy printer. Yeah, that was a thing. They made it for use with the Game Boy camera. Nintendo used to be very strange and experimental with the peripheral accessories, even though they would later integrate many of them into base hardware. Though to be fair, I can't entirely complain about this, considering in Yu-Gi-Oh! They have blank cards specifically designed to later turn themselves into completed products after they react with or seal within themselves the spirits of the various monsters the various protagonists gain as summons. Maybe the emblem area for the image is photoreactive to electrical stimuli or something. Maybe the PETs include laser printer tech as part of the chip reader function. Well, whatever. Neto's late for class again, as he can't get up when Rockman tries to wake him up. Already did a rant about that in the Battle Network 3 reviews. Please go see that there, as it covers how our society has changed over time due to us having access to mobile programmable alarm clocks. Which leads him into running straight into Higure on his first day on the job as a teacher at Akihara Elementary School, spilling his chips everywhere.
Careful, they're ruffled.
He's actually here to teach a class on virus busting, which makes sense considering the rash of World 3 attacks. It just makes sense for even elementary school kids to be in on at least the essentials of cyber self-defense. I mean, he's not wrong, but it doesn't work against everybody. Hell, one of the reasons I started reviewing the anime was to try and take a break from my attempts to complete Battle Network 4 for review, and invisible chips are mostly worthless against Duo. Seriously, that guy is impossible on harder difficulties unless you're crazy lucky. Mainly due to how terrible the battle chips in Battle Network 4 are. My tangents are never pointless! Wait, right, you weren't referring to me. As you could probably guess, this episode is all about properly establishing the battle chips as a combat mechanic for the series, thanks to the cast member most obsessed with collecting them. Yaito later at her designer secret clubhouse showing off her stash of ultra-rare chips, which turn Glide, who is not a combat Navi, into a powerhouse that can easily match the more battle-freak-oriented Navis like Gutsman and Rockman. But this is why Higure has shown up here. His obsession with rare chips has turned him to the dark side of the net force, and is stalking his way up to stealing Yaito's library. Thus, he locks down the school when Yaito's helping out Mariko with the school's newspaper, in order to get them to agree to an anti-duel for the rare chips. Unfortunately, elementary duel schools just took a long time to catch on. Sure, you can put on Battle City anytime you want, but you have to wait until the 7th series to get any traction with that age group. And even then, the demographic for the series usually hates seeing protagonists as young as themselves do stuff. Or they could cut power to the school at their circuit breaker. Safety designs for a school should make it so such systems unlock automatically if they lose power. This is once again why you don't make everything digital. Keeping idiot-proof security in part analog is important for such circumstances. This isn't an actual prison or a biological agent's lab. And yet this could count as terrorism as you're holding people hostage for ransom. Yeah, I do like how Hikure isn't a World 3 agent here and just a collection otaku taking things a bit too far, but you could have framed this better as a pop quiz with real-world consequences where you're free to go afterwards, instead of outright trapped. It's the difference between mischievous and malicious. But fortunately now shows us he's not as dim as others think of him, as from the supplied clues of Numberman's sudden appearance in the chip obsession, he figures out that Higure's behind all of this. Probably helps as well that Numberman's programmed with his voice. Again, not joking, both Higure and Numberman are voiced by actor Yuji Ueda, who's most known as Brock from Pokemon. Though Dream Aura can only protect Glide for so long, Mariko remembering there's a password that can get them around the school system's firewall that are keeping them isolated. Only Mariko forgot the passwords to each of them. So it's up to Roll to recover that, while Rockman holds off the viruses Higure summons to stop it.
わかったわ。第一のパスワードのヒントは HATO。グランドの鳩小屋で飼っている鳩の数だわ。
で、先生、その数は？
あ、ごめん。忘れちゃった。
Mariko's kind of a ditz in her anime incarnation. All the barriers are locked with objects around the school, so it's good that Neto's still free to run around the place hunting the clues. It's almost as if Higure should have locked more than just the classroom's doors, right? But the last of the passwords needed is the number of flowers the school has planted up front, and there's a few hundred of those there, so Saloma, who was tending them earlier in the episode, gives up the number of them planted, so they can finally debunk Neverman's strategy to take him down. Have I mentioned how much I love Area Steel Chips? With this, Numberman surrenders and Higure pleads for forgiveness, which is not given, mainly as he pissed Mariko off at deriding the kid's efforts earlier as pointless, even as it led them to beating his butt. Though his mental redemption is all the result of her actions, as she reminds him of the first time he felt joy at getting a rare collectible, which gets him to actually redeem himself. After all, it's not like he did something completely unforgivable that should have been addressed, like, say, a bratty middle schooler telling a depressed kid to kill himself. No, he just went too far with his obsession and needs a healthier outlet for it, like opening a ship that specializes in retailing battle chips, both as a means of earning a living and possibly trading for something he's missing in his collection. Oh, and he's crushing on Mariko from now on as well, a subplot regularly referenced, but ends up legitimately going nowhere. The wrap-up. We have 6, count 'em, 6 new battle chips to add to the count this time, both of Yaito's used twice for 8 casts of the franchise's collectibles. Not as high in count as later when it ended up happening, but at least it felt like there was more of a battle this time. We have 1 new character introduction for Higure and Numberman. We have Mariko being a ditz, and get used to her being kind-hearted but oblivious for a lot of this. And we have a Punish Neto episode with him being late to everything that goes down. Work on fixing that, Neto, lest you be tardy at life. Overall, while once again a more slapsticky episode, this felt better as opposed to previous ones for a couple reasons. It was an adaptation of the game chapter plot for Higure's introduction, so they had a roadmap on what to do to work with. And where the real-world event held up any chance of seeing an actual digital battle go down previously, this one felt far more appropriate to do so, as the digital hang-up to actually fighting was, much like some story events in the games, was sequestered by a real-world obstacle instead of arbitrarily inserted so Xebec wouldn't have to animate a battle scene. Thus it felt more balanced in recreating the game dynamic between the Hikari brothers. Unsurprisingly, this episode was the first contribution to the series by Keiichi Hasegawa, a writer I've talked about before numerous times, and this felt right up his alley at the end of the day with what he does with stories, characters, and the dynamics that play between them. So honestly, it felt like the first good episode of the series as a result. Amusing factoid about this one, though. Early in the episode with Higure in class, there's an odd cutaway scene to Saloma tending some plants outside the school and staring oddly at Higure through the windows, and another later in the episode as things go down. While it's intended to be seen as an arc thing for her, Miyuki, and Mesa to be oddly involved in or observing events near side of the series, it actually has a second intention that is actually an actor illusion. Saloma's voice actress, Omi Minami, is married to Higure's voice actor Yuji Ueda. They met when they both played starring roles in the 90s anime and previous Studio Xebec production, Martian Successor Nadeshiko, and played Ruri Hoshino and Akito Tenkawa respectively. And on occasion since then, when they're on a project, there is at some point where their relation is referenced as an anachronistic oddity among the proceedings, though both usually have not been cast for the same projects in some time, at least if it isn't a role reprisal for a crossover game or something. So a waifu's role being used to defeat her husband going a bit obsessively nuts is just plain hilarious. After presumably a time skip, Mesa hunts down the kids at Yai's treehouse and drags them out to do something that doesn't involve net battling. You can't tell me what to do, you're not my real dad! Meh, it's just as well. Dekau's lost 23 times in a row, and now his losing streak is just becoming embarrassing. You know, she's got a point. Under what authority does Mesa have to have them do anything?
心配してきてみりゃ案の定だ。子供なら部屋の中でグダグダしてんじゃねえ。元気よく表で遊びやがり。表に。
As someone who had this happen whenever I'd be over on weekends with my dad after my parents divorced and had to put up with my stepmom shoving me out of the house only for there to be absolutely jack all to do outside, as there wasn't a nearby playground or park to go to solo where he wouldn't just be at risk of being kidnapped, I just have to ask, what do you expect them to do? There's no point in going outside to play if there's nothing to play with or point in going out there. Granted, they're in a group, so maybe they could get a sports game going, but honestly, this episode is once more a satire piece, contrasting the modern-day kids with their tech and gaming peripherals that allow them to spend time having fun with their friends indoors with the old-timer that has no memory of what it was like to play as a kid, and how lonely that could be for those not physically inclined or held no interest in sports. You're really not, though. You're imposing your views and experiences on those who do not share them, and with absolutely zero parental permission to drag them into this. I'll say this, at least this pays off way down the line. Because Neto stays physically fit due to Mesa's infrequent bouts of forced training, he is in great shape when the cross-fusion stuff starts happening. Male as well, since she's eventually able to suit up. But regardless of that, come on! They have gym classes for this crap! These writers have issues that are a very low expectation of their audience. Even when I was the target demographic, I didn't find this humor funny. In the meantime, World 3 is reviewing the cases where Rockman keeps interfering, Wiley chewing out the failures and easy retreating of his subordinates, all three of them arguing over who did the worst job, with Wiley just telling them to get on with their work and not fail next time, as they collectively decide to target a robotics aquarium. Couldn't you just have this as a normal aquarium, or did something happen to the natural marine life on this version of Earth? Not everything has to be cybernetic future tech, you know. Hell, I'd expect this as an exhibit in a normal aquarium! Their attack sends the fish into a frenzy. These robots designed with some kind of lift system in them that lets them swim around in the air and just accost people. You know, I really don't even know what to think with this plot. You could have easily gotten Mesa to take the lot of them to the aquarium, only for the World 3 agents to make something go wrong with some automation element of their habitat, like their feeding system or the tubes connecting the regions of the tanks so predator fish got in among prey fish, or threatened a rare specimen or two which would have resulted in bonding on the sides in some form. Instead, it's a balding fishmonger with a potbelly encouraging kids to exercise at knife point, and then a robot fish attack. Anyways, the Navis log in to see what's going on in the system, only to find Jaws has apparently come to play, both of whom mistake all this as his doing, especially as he causes Rockman to fall into the swarm of water-type viruses. Neto's held off from helping them by being chased by a shark, and it takes forever for Mesa to let them know that a shark's vision is based on movement, to get them away from it and back to support him with battle chips. Unfortunately, Sword's a bit too dull to work on this one, which thus leads to intervention from a third party with a new chip. Man, whoever threw that fish skeleton really made it come close to Neto. Could have killed him if it weren't careful. He should work on his aim. I wonder who it could be. Alas, the nefarious elect element chip isn't enough. Sharkman coming in to momentarily paralyze the giant version of the jellyfish viruses for it to deal the damage needed. Sharkman afterwards introduces himself. His actions here attest to Judge Rockman's skills, which he feels needs polishing, much the same as his operators. Which one could possibly see as the point of this episode, if Mesa was in any way subtle in his insanity, and just how absolutely contrived in its convenience the knowledge that came up in this episode was. But who could that masked man that gave him the elect sword possibly be? The wrap-up. We have 3 new chips used this time, with the Mega Guts Punzen bomb chips from the beginning, as well as Lex Sword, and with 4 uses of battle chips overall. We have 1 new character introduction, on the part of Sharkman, Mesa's secret net navvy. Oh, spoilers? Wait, right, we've all seen the Battle Network reviews, so no, it wasn't. We have a torture plot with Lan and company being forced to exercise against their will. We have annoying character award going to Mesa for the enforced exercise plot when he could have just encouraged them to not become too dedicated to something, even though they were improving an important skill in their society to begin with, and he actually knows this. This one is just, wasted potential at the end of the day. In hindsight of how the series uses Mesa, Saloma, and Yuki, alongside the incidents the kids have been getting involved in, this could have gone the route of a well-meant training session in order to make it seem like a better way to get out of the situations they are getting themselves into, requiring a little bit of thought and physical action to get out of and stay safe from them. Something a responsible adult would want. Instead, you have to force them through it. Anytime you force someone to do something, they are far less likely to be receptive to the end result. Motivation is half the task in being dedicated to an activity, and what Mesa really needed to do was hype them up on doing something physically inclined beforehand instead of forcing them into it. Without that integral part of the story, which was actually handled slightly better in the localization, surprisingly with Mesa being less harsh about it, this episode just ends up another in the early series flops. One that is, unfortunately, important to the larger arc. I swear to the goddess Aura, if I hear one solitary ice pun, I'm out of here. Episode 6 brings us the first technically anime original character of the series, Toru Hikawa, a classmate of Neto and company in their school's Class B, who just happens to be blackmailed by Midori into getting access to the waterworks, permitting World 3 to shut off all the water to the town. Ah yes, a classic Kenichi Araki plot. Well, it would be if this weren't taken directly from the games. This is actually the first one he wrote since episode 2. This goes as you'd expect. With water being such a requirement for life, any of it in the bottled variety quickly becomes scarce, as such from rivers and ponds aren't exactly safe for human consumption. Yaito is her own stable supply, so she doesn't have to worry about that cause she's rich, which she's willing to share. Though before anyone asks why no navies have been to check on the problem, the show answers that question itself, revealing that since water is a precious resource, it has an actual security lock on the place to prevent general navies from trying to enter it. The public transportation network, by comparison, due to how integrated into everything mass transit is, couldn't have that kind of comparative protection that's been installed there. However, once again because Yai is rich, she through proxy of her father does have the kind of clearance needed to get into the waterworks network. So good that such undeserved privilege is being used for good instead of evil. Thus resulting in Glide finding the entire system is just plain frozen over with the network equivalent of ice, with Glide soon after falling prey to whatever did it, leading to Yaito taking desperate measures.
Gate 3
Funny? Granted, I get why Araki did this gag. It's a callback reference to him writing out some of the Brave series giant robot shows and others in their genre. Specifically the series Go-Zower, a show about a 5th grade class being given a group of giant robots to fight space invaders with. The show is as dumb as you think it might be, especially with how the actual school they attended transformed and unfolded itself in ridiculous ways just to launch the various mechs from within it. I'm not kidding, they were literally integrated into the building. At the very least, it tried to take its ridiculous premise seriously, so there's that, I guess. Midori reports to Wily on the current success of her operation, Toru right beside her and hating himself for playing part in her scheme. But he doesn't have much of a choice. Neto and the others make it into the waterworks, finding even the plant's security drones are locked up with the system frozen like it is. At least until Dekao stupidly attacks it. And ask if there's something they put in the water with this town, but the waterworks is shut down right now. Fortunately, Hikawa fixes his mistake by hacking the robot with Gutsman, it leading to them finding where Midori and Toru have sequestered themselves, as well as a confrontation in the net against Toru's Navi, the expected Iceman, who has frozen Glide solid. Wait a second, frozen isn't a status condition in the Battle Network games! Fortunately, Iceman isn't exactly a powerhouse. He's more a glass cannon. It's his specials you have to watch out for. Well, that and Color Man holding Glide hostage so he can't fairly retaliate, leading to him being frozen as well. And nothing Neto tries can break him free, as at this point, he doesn't have any fire chips. Fortunately, the keycard Toru dropped earlier allows them physical access closer to the system, where they find Toru's father, the man who actually works here, and who has been tied up and locked up by Midori, and held hostage all this time to get Toru to cooperate with her. Wait, if Hikawa's been locked up in the waterworks like this, then what did Midori need Toru for, exactly? Yeah, he froze the system with Iceman, but it seemed like Midori could have done all this after she got access on her own. Maybe not freezing the system specifically, but still some damage of some sort? Now I get why they swapped operators, considering how the series ends up including Toru in the series, after this event coming on board as the occasionally appearing fifth man to Neto's group of friends. Another of whom that is mostly dropped from involvement at the beginning of Access to only make cameos afterwards. Which makes sense. The character didn't work on his own, and they had no narrative focus on his character to really give him reason to be sticking around. But honestly, since Toru really doesn't do much in the series at all, they could have just played this straight and had Neto, after picking up the keycard, be witness to Toru being abducted as was the game's plot with him, leading to Hikawa with Iceman pulling the sabotage to get him back, while Neto and company chase the abductors, which leads to them later resolving this plot. Though to continue the compare-contrast, while the poisoning the water part of the game didn't make the most sense unless the poison was added into the system for it to be released once water started flowing again, here it makes a bit more sense both in and out of universe. As with the system stalled as it is, the water purification system isn't working right. Leave it backed up for too long, and the system stops treating the water and the bacteria in it. Thus, even if water starts flowing again, it'll all be contaminated and the bacteria they'd normally get rid of will infect all of the lines farther down the system. And, well, I've lived through that exact thing happening. In 1993, I lived in the Milwaukee region of Wisconsin, and that year, a breakdown at one of the city's 2 water purification plants caused a mass outbreak of cryptosporidium bacteria, leaving over half the city serviced by the plant sick, including myself. It was the single largest waterborne disease outbreak in American history. I was sick for a straight month that year from it, and that isn't fun as you might think when you're 4. And even worse, the damage it did to my digestive system from that bacterial infection left me with horrible digestion and gastrointestinal issues until I hit puberty 7 years later. It was that bad an infection. Yeah, there's a reason I ended up becoming overweight as an adult that isn't just genetics and the American market leaning towards fatty foods. It's hard to learn proper portion control as a kid, when eating more than a mouthful can get you sick, and then not have that problem anymore as an adult to hold you back from gorging on good food. You legitimately forget how to practice restraint as it's not as ingrained into you into your formative years. And no joke, people did die from that. Eventually the affected plant was shut down and had to entirely be replaced as they couldn't get the bacteria out of it once it was infested. To this day, some regions of Milwaukee still haven't gotten the bacteria properly out of their water supply, leading sections of it to rely on weekly deliveries of 5-gallon water barrels to go in home water coolers, or simple tap cover filters to prevent infection in home. Hell, when I moved into an apartment complex a couple years ago, I immediately bought one for me and my roommates to use simply because that happening left me and my extended family paranoid over water quality. As always, there is a method to madness. With the plants about to break down, Toru can't take it anymore, finally fighting back against Midori, who just leaves with her job done, leaving Color Man to stall anyone else who might show up. But it's not the Navis that deal with it. Hikawa himself leading the kids to deal with the storage tanks manually by opening the release valves to prevent the outbreak. With Color Man retreating, the father and son reunite. Toru, regretful for what he had to do, deciding to stick with this group infrequently if they're going to be repeatedly caught up in the goings-on with World 3's minions. The wrap-up. Once again, 2 more characters introduced, with, as said, the first being the first anime original. We have the 4th World 3 plot that would actually be able to seriously injure or kill people, with of course it being the second one from Annoy that's actually subtle and smart about what they're doing. We have one game story adaptation that is both better and worse than its original, which is again playing into expectation. And we have Kenichi Araki trying to rein in a series that's been just plain silly up until now. It'll still take a while before real course correction could take place, but it feels like there was a legitimate attempt to wring drama out of this one, considering none of the Navis were a good fit to face Iceman once his power set got them. Something that will become less effective with time as the group get actual fire and more electric element battleships, to say nothing of solid change in the Soul Unison system. Iceman is just one of those Navis that's hit hard with this series' power creep. Now tell it that Toru is just not that good an operator, making it totally understandable why he'd eventually be phased out of having recurring character status in the series. This week, Count Zap is up to no good, breaking past high-level security systems to rock out at the Akihara museums, using his PT and a superconductive guitar to break the entire security mainframe, and stealing valuables in the cases. These thefts continue on consecutive days, all practice for the man's big heist. With the kids, they're all lining up for the release of the newest RPG game with new specialized virtual reality support for it, with Mesa, of course, not getting the appeal, and trying to interrupt the complete lawful sales of entertainment products. I mean, what game could this possibly be? The World Revision 1? Actually, it could have been? I mean, this aired in 2002, so I'd expect this to have been a coincidental nod at the Dot Hack franchise, considering Dot Hack's Sign had just started airing the same month as this episode's broadcast, and advertisement trailers for Dot Hack Infection would have begun by this point these episodes were in production. This then introduces yet another subplot that made no sense originally if you saw this series in its screwed-up dub broadcast, as Mariko intervenes on Mesa's antics and gets him to calm down, as Mesa, like Higure, is crushing heavily on Mariko. This version of Mesa and Higure seeing each other as rivals in love. If you saw the dub broadcast, well, said subplot literally came the hell out of nowhere and just existed, until this episode was broadcast late in the order, after over 40 episodes that are supposed to come after this one made its air to finally give context to where it started. And there is no victor. Though personally, I'd put my money on the otaku. Anyways, Alex congratulated by Wiley for succeeding in stealing some valuable crap, but aside from potentially getting them some capital for later schemes, it doesn't achieve much. What's he really after? Do we need an adult? 'Cause I think we need an adult. Saloma is briefed by Miyuki on the escalating complexity level of security grids that Alec has barreled through. It's obvious he's been working his way up to blast through a level 9 security system next, which only leaves him a few potential targets to aim at which bear such restrictions. One of which being that of Gabcom, Yaito's father's game company, who is releasing the game the group were after the following day. With them losing their place in line, Neto and friends have begged Yai to let them have a shot at the new game, and Yaito's dad can't resist a request from their daughter. Thus, they're led into the Gabcom headquarters to their main servers to play the original development copy of the game saved on them. The original development copy, of course, being different from the one put on a downloadable platform or given hard copies, as that's where all the development data is stored. You lose it, and you can't go in to make changes or update and modify the game data to fix, say, system bugs, or adapt the game for re-release onto a new console, or have the original art assets for remastering the game's content. It's actually really important in the grand scheme of things, acting similarly to a master tape for a movie or TV show. And there are game companies that have lost such data. Case in point, it is why several Square Enix games that were previously console exclusives, before being released onto the Steam platform, have their PC version be so god-awful. So depending on how the future treats or mass prints physical copies of media, it would mean the game would become super rare due to limited quantities existing, or just not being able to be resold at all. And yes, the place is protected by the level 9 security system Elec wants to break through, and even a level 10 one beyond it to protect all their game data. But with the training and development of his Navi, Elecman just barrels straight through it. Fortunately, because Yai's dad got the kids a direct uplink to the mainframe to play the game as it actually launched, Neto's able to send Rockman in to prevent him from just straight up stealing and then deleting the game.
Lightning slot in.
Now obviously in Elec navigating set an electric chip, it's going to boost his power like mad. And the thing about Count Elec is he carries so much electrical stuff with him that it manages to supercharge his Navi beyond its standard specs. But still, what's the point of just stealing a game? And how is that moving that forward? You're literally terrorists, and you spent the last several nights stealing actual precious valuables. A game is worth a lot to the right people, especially to the company that developed it as they're losing the money they put in, but if you're just doing it for spite, then you're in the wrong organization, when your boss literally wants to destroy the network and the society that's reliant on it with it. Can we have Midori and Mr. Match back, please? They seem to actually understand what they're doing. Whatever, Neto and Rockman chain together use of the shotgun and sword chips to get beyond Elecman's attack, leaving time to get reinforcements from Saloma and her Navi Woodman. And as the element cycle in the game goes, Wood beats electricity like a drum, blocking off Elecman's power boosts from being able to strike him. Though something that should not work from what they established follows. See, Elecman gains power and invincibility from being struck with electrical attacks. So what does Neto do on Rockman's suggestion? Give him the Elec Sword to beat him. Except by the logic just presented in this episode, this should do the opposite and render Elecman invincible. But it doesn't. It instead short-circuits him so he has to withdraw. What the hell? Though it seems like it doesn't matter, as Elecman's got the data. At least until Saloma pulls a tuxedo mask and throws razor-sharp roses to pierce his balloon, distracting him long enough so he drops his PET, losing the data with it. Wait, Elec was in a hot air balloon. How did Saloma attack him at the angle she did to even get her roses to hit? She was aiming down at an object that was above her! Whatever, the day is saved thanks to this, so the game can release as it was supposed to. Though, as the episode ends, we see the setup for the beginning climax of the first arc, as we are teased with the beginning of the N1 Grand Prix. The wrap-up. 4 chips are used this time, one being the new Lightning Element battle chip on Elecman's behalf. We have the character introduction for Woodman. Woodman is absolute boss. Not Boss Borat, but still really cool. We have the first of many times Mesa, Sal, and Miyuki dress up in cheap and obnoxious cosplay to protect their secret identity, even though again, it's really obvious who they are. We have a villain face plant given to Elec, for showing that he's completely nuts and zapped his brain once too often to think this was a decent plan for a terrorist organization. There is a reason why Midori is the most competent out of the lot of them. Look, I know this is a show for younger audiences, and there's legitimacy to corporate theft and espionage screwing people over, but they really have to frame it as that in the motivation. Not the old standby of kids will be sad, 'cause they won't be. On top of there still being physical game releases of the game they were stealing the development data for, kids will generally be angry at the perpetrator for why a game isn't getting out, and blame the party actually responsible. If anything, it would galvanize the capable into hunting Elec to the ends of the earth as long as he still had the data. All in all, not a smart plan on his behalf. We see Hinaken at his apartment watching a recording of fireworks and other hot things on a holoprojector, ultimately stuck in a rut ever since Neto and Rockman beat him in the first episode.
Rockman!
Dude, take the hint. He just isn't into you. And its name is King Crimson. What, it's King Crimson, it just works. Yeah, to get the rest of the significant actor illusions for Hinoken's voice actor out of the way, Katsuyuki Konishi also voices .hack Sakaki,
Sakaki!
Volfog in Gao Gaigar, Gosei Knight in Goseiger, Kamina in Gurren Lagann, Akito Mikishima in the 2000s Guyver anime, Amita Maru in Shaman King, Lloyd Irving in Tales of Symphonia, Battletracto Max in 4S Gridman, and freaking Grand Convoy in Transformer Super Link. The dude gets around! Though as usual, the .hack bit is the most hilarious to me personally, as him being obsessed with defeating Rockman in this series, while later playing Sakaki. Well, Rockman's voice actor voices Zelkova in GU. It's like perfect serendipity! And sure enough, the true fire he wants to showcase involves once again overclocking every oven and system heater Fireman can find as fast as it can. One of which affects Meru when she's at a salon getting her hair treated in a dryer, leaving it ridiculously curly, to Neto's amusement when he inevitably sees it. You laugh now, Neto, but canonically, you're marrying that. Plus, she can just take revenge by deleting your homework as she knows your passwords, fool. Command, Control FU. This pissing contest between the two likewise escalates to including their navies, to Rockman's bafflement. Still, with Fireman racing all over the net, it is hard to get a beat on him and a plan of attack to counter his antics, which sort of defeats the purpose of Hinoken doing this to call Rockman out for a fight, since, well, Neto and Rockman can't exactly find them, nor are they exactly paying attention when Fireman passes through their house to overcook toast he's eating, as he apparently eats it black and burned to begin with. It takes Fireman reminding him that maybe a direct attack on him might be better. I mean, Neto can be pretty dense at times.
Yosh! その作戦で行くぞ!
Hinoken-sama.
Like, there's a legitimate reason Hinoken, out of the antagonist, has an arc to him later. He has great interactions with Fireman. Thus he goes to Roll and Gutsman, who are still pissed at Rockman because, and delivers to them a formal letter of challenge to a battle, so they can settle this in a civilized manner of attacking each other until they die. What, wouldn't you? But in the letter, Fireman reveals he and Hinoken are behind the torch-ups around town, including what happened to Mail's hair. And likewise why Rockman thinking Roll wasn't paying attention doing her job to look after Mail being why she's pissed at him. So the pair head out for their own bite of revenge. A gigabyte, one could say.
絶対に許さない。絶対許さないんだから。よし、俺も助太刀するぜ。
There is a reason why you don't piss off a tsundere. It's only because of Gutsman being worried for Roll that Neto and Rockman are actually given the message to come to the battle, delaying them long enough that Fireman ends up embarrassed that his contact them directly plan didn't work out the way he wanted for his master, with Roll showing up instead.
肩払いたい。
みんなで私をバカにして。
And while Mail and Roll are badasses later in the series, well, their main skill is always in support, and not necessarily on the front lines as of yet. Plus, when you're angry, you don't always think straight, leading to Fireman easily regaining the upper hand until Rockman finally shows up to get their burning rivalry back up to bonfire strength. Unfortunately, Fireman's skill is an inborn ability and not a battle chip, so yeah, one-use attacks to counter aren't exactly the best in this case if they're only going to match it. Eventually, Rockman pushes Roll out of the attack range of one of the towers, getting hit himself in the process as there wasn't time for him to dodge himself. Why is it this, of all series, that actually probably pulls off the push someone out of the way of an attack but doesn't have an actual chance to get clear themselves thing? I feel like I've commented on that a half-dozen times now, where they've all screwed that up as the person who pushes the other out of the way stays stationary after the push instead of moving with them. Rockman here was moving with her, but didn't have the chance to get out of the way after her. I know I'm harping on this out of nowhere as it's been a while since the last one to do it popped up, but it's just so refreshing to see it done right for once! But yeah, taking the blast for Roll, that immediately resolves the short-lived feud between them, as Rockman can't continue to battle, leaving them prey to a magma wave Fireman releases. Roll tries another water tower, sending Gutsman through the wave of lava, and right into Fireman, damaging enough to get him to log out and stop the wave. But while Roll and Mega Man can make up without much problem, well, 11-year-old kids can be a bit more stubborn about their feelings, and Neto has yet to learn that you do not piss off the tsundere. Yeah, let's just get out of here. The wrap-up. We have the introduction and 2 uses out of Aqua Tower, a battleship type I wish I had seen more of throughout the games, even if they are a bit slow. We have bonding time with Hinoken and Fireman, arguably the best relationship we get out of an antagonist and his Navi. We have successfully failed to dodge, doing correctly the push someone else out of an injury move the right way, which I see screwed up so often in Japanese media. We have Meru being an adorable soon, alongside her finally being allowed to step up to the forefront. And we have delayed broadcast, with this being the 3rd episode in a row that in America was not broadcast until 18 months after the series had begun airing, and during that period where they should have been starting to release episodes of Mega Man Access. And it's disappointing as it's a good, non-offensive character dynamic piece between the cast. And it's not only good, it's absolutely in every way fun. The gags work, I really like the character interplay, and it pulls off without a fail a pet peeve narrative trope of mine in the one way where it doesn't piss me off. Sadly though, this would be the last contribution by staff writer Masaharu Amiya for this season. He would return to write episodes of Access, Stream, and Star Force, but nothing else for this first run, which is disappointing, as well he usually does one-and-done filler episodes instead of longer content, arcs, or series composition. Usually his one-offs are well done and researched. I kinda get why he wasn't here longer though, as he was busy writing back-to-back on the anime adaptations of the harem romance comedy Ai Yori Aoshi, and also the original Beyblade series. Yes, seriously, sometimes you cannot make this crap up. So after 8 episodes of failure, Dr. Wily's had enough of his subordinates failing against one Navi, operator, and their friends, resulting in the old cliche of eliminating the only crew he has when he doesn't have the spare resources to do so. However, he's stopped from this foolish decision by his last minion, Mahajarama, who is Wily's second-hand man that these guys are only just now meeting, who will be taking responsibility for them. Meanwhile, as Neto and Mail race to practice for the upcoming Grand Prix, the pair see a crowd in an arcade, watching one operator with a standard Navi take on with ease a vastly superior opponent close in strength to Gutsman. And since we open the series with Neto and a standard Navi getting crushed by Gutsman, it's clear the difference in skill between them is real. Wonder if we'll see him again. Mahajarama, it's revealed, is a yoga instructor on public access television, his show's profits being one of the ways Wily's been getting financing for his schemes. But still, why is he getting involved?
所詮お前たちの貧弱なおつむではわかるまい。これは巧妙に計算された作戦なのだ。作戦?
Oh, do tell. I spent a decade explaining why the schemes of the great leader of Shocker, as well as any production made by Shinichiro Shirakura, are a long string of idiot plots. I'm pretty sure I can poke holes into it.
人々をテレビに釘付けにすることで社会に恐怖と混乱を巻き起こす。
No, that's Fox News. This is a yoga exercise show. In reality, with the amount of viewership the show gets on a weekly basis, it makes for primetime targeting of most of the populace for a Navi with hypnotic abilities, specifically Mahajarama's Magic Man, to mind screw the populace into thinking they're animals. And due to Neto and Mail being late, they're the only ones not affected, at least among the human population, as Navis also can't be mind screwed by it. Thus, they can fill the pair in on what's turned the town nuts.
どうだ、これが作戦というものだ。お前たちもこれで少しは目が覚めた。ん? Not really. Hypnosis is just a cheap tactic to make weak plans stronger. Do you actually have anything by which to follow this up before the hypnosis wears off? Because hypnosis wears off.
You've only got a limited window before it needs to be reapplied, or everyone's back to normal. Hypnosis is not the same as brainwashing. Plus, you hit your own minions with that blast, so you hit your own minions, which incapacitates them as well. So good luck on getting anything done. Now, if you were to use this to get or sabotage something while everyone's impaired, that would be a good plan, as this is the first step of a 1-2 punch attack on your enemies or society itself. But if there's no actual follow-up to this, then it's just hypnotizing everyone so they act like idiots, then congratulations! Midori is still the most competent of your forces with how her plans have been focused, and Hinoken did the most to actually endanger people's lives to strike back at the society you loathe. So, Wily, you've done nothing but alienate the 2 actual people who can do their jobs under you because they were thwarted by interlopers that were stronger than they expected. But then, how can you expect to understand that with your pathetic brain power? Mic drop, we're out of here. We're skipping past all the people acting like animals, part of this as, yeah, it's stupid and by the numbers there, though how the hell is Miyuki mimicking a flying squirrel? But since this all started at the TV station, it's obvious even to Neto that they should be able to stop it there as well. However, as Rockman's transmitted, he's passed by another transmitted Navi. Whoever it was is held off from intervening for now, as he has to focus on fighting Magic Man, who foolishly reveals that Mahajirama is behind all of this. Why would you do that? By the Navi outing him as the operator, he's entirely lost his cover. They could have made it seem as if this was a normal broadcast hijacking. They've been known to infrequently happen in the past, and it wouldn't be the first time Wily or one of his operatives have done that sort of thing. But instead, Mahajirama is going to lose the show and World 3's largest source of income entirely. It defeats the entire point of the short-lived nature of this attack, as at some point, someone else outside of the town is going to intercede on this. Regardless, Magic Man summons an enormous swarm of viruses to block Rockman from being able to get to him. As Magic Man in the anime is more than anything a glass cannon that can't let himself get hit, thus has to summon the swarms. And what's more show how Magic Man is, well, as a doofus. When he warps right behind him, Magic Man can't figure out where he is. At this point, he basically deserves to be deleted. Famous last words. But as said, Magic Man's a glass cannon, so can counterattack hard, leaving it to another Navi and their insane speed to actually finish the job, even though he got here way before Rockman did, and has only been waiting to steal the kill. Dick move, mysterious Navi in purple and red. Dick move. With Magic Man out of the system, Mahajirama surrenders, returning everyone to normal before phasing out of reality somehow. Whatever, the day is saved. All thanks to... Enzen Ijuin! Yes, this is how they introduce him and Blues in the anime, by saving the heroes' butts after watching them do everything, which admittedly is still a dick move, and they still have an ego as you'd expect a pre-character development version of this pair to be. Oh, I'm not reneging on what I said back in Battle Network 1, or my full character analysis of Chad throughout the Battle Network reviews. Enzan is far less of an asshole than his main game counterpart, as he doesn't have the chip of being the super elite special on his shoulder to lord over everyone. As in the anime, he's not a government official or anything, just a normal kid with an elite upbringing and a knack for net battling out to test and improve his own skills against strong opponents. Rumors he's heard about Neto and Co. making him investigate his likely competition, and deciding to help out here. Again, he's kind of got a point. Anime continuity Neto is good, but he's not the natural net battle wizard that game series Lan is. It comes off as a hell of a lot less arrogant, ultimately. Especially since it's Neto and Rockman that have a reputation they've got to live up to, instead of the other way around. So as the rival character has completed his introduction, next up, the obligatory anime tournament arc. The wrap-up. No new battleships this time, with Rockman at least making decent use of the 2 scene. We've got 4 new characters added to the mix, filling out the normal roster of recurring cast members, bar reporter Midori Kawa, who we'll be seeing soon. We have villain face plans for Dr. Wily alienating his two good agents, all for a new guy who couldn't follow through on step 1 of what should have been a multi-stage plan. Granted, 2002 across the board for television series and movies at the time wasn't the best for evil villain plots across the board. Rockman's competition for both kids' and adults' attention had equally stupid antagonists doing crap, but this is just embarrassing how he hyped up Mahajirama, and he not only couldn't seal the deal, but lost a significant amount of long-term resources for World 3 in the process. Overall though, this one's okay. Getting Enzan in here to shake up the dynamics as a wildcard is a good thing, even though from this point on, most of the villain plots would just end up revolving around or being part of the big tournament arc of the early season, which will be dominating the remaining majority of the first arc of the series.